welcome, everyone. I'm Sister Mary Louise Edwards. I have one announcement, and of course that is, would each of you kindly take time right now to turn off any electronic devices you're using. Thank you very much. If it rings, it better be for me. I'd like to welcome all of you to the 6th annual Freshman Read Authors Forum. And as always, we will begin with a moment of silence and time for prayer. God of earth, wind, sea, and fire, we praise and thank you as a community of learners for giving us the opportunity to study together a pearl in the storm. Ever-provident God, give insight, wisdom, and direction to the many ways that President McClure's story has inspired us and taught us the common ground of human experience. And finally, loving God, we ask your blessing on the mission of our sister school, Spalding University. Give it prosperity today and in the years to come. We ask all of this through the intercession of our sister, Catharine of Siena, and our brother, Jesus. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. That's better. Come on, we just ate lunch. My name is Bill Houston. I'm president. I think I know most everyone here. I want to personally welcome all the freshman read teams, especially my team because it was the best one. You'll find out later. All the team leaders. Without leaders, we wouldn't be able to have teams. Those faculty and staff members that are with us today, and friends from the community, and this Dominican Sisters of Peace. We've got a great representation of across the board that support reading. You know, it was six years ago that we were challenged as an institution to submit to our accrediting agency something that would affect every student coming into St. Catharine College. And we put several committees together, and they came up with the acronym RTL3. And that's read to learn, read to lead, and read to live. And as Sister said, we have had 6 years now of the freshman read program. Something that really excites me because we get to read a book that was selected by a group the year before. We all read the same book, and we all come together and we talk about that book. And then 5 out of the 6 years, we've been fortunate enough to have that author come and to share his or her experiences with us about the book, and to actually give us the opportunity to ask questions and be so gracious to get autographs after the lecture and everything else. So I know you're in for a real treat today. I want you to stop and think, when we hear the word first, is usually followed by, well, that was the first, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth time. But the experience that you're going to hear about in just a few minutes was done the first time by a woman, and it's never been done again. It's been tried, but it's never been done again. You know, we sent a team to the moon, we sent a team many different things, and it's always been duplicated, but this is one feat that has never been duplicated. Tori McClure, president of Spalding University in Louisville, became best known as the first woman and the first American to row solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She also was the first American to travel over land to the geographic South Pole, skied 740 miles from the ice shelf to the pole. She is also an avid mountaineer and has climbed on several continents. She was the first woman to climb Lewis Nanatuck Summit in Antarctica. You know, a lot of us, for a little recreation, we might eat supper and go out and play a couple sets of tennis. You know, this lady gets on a plane and goes to the most remote places in the world to be the first to do something. Tori believes that her experiences as an explorer and an adventurer and the lessons learned from the wild, from Mount Rainier to the Atlantic Ocean, from Kenya to South Africa, has served her well as a civic and an educational leader, working in urban centers as a professional. She earned her bachelor's degree from Smith College, a master's of divinity from Harvard University, and a Juris Doctor from the University of Louisville School of Law, and also a master's of fine arts in writing from Spalding University. Previous to becoming Spalding's president, she served as vice president, and before that, a member of the Spalding Board of Trustees. She has been a chaplain at the City Hospital of Boston, an executive director of a shelter for homeless women, and a public policy assistant for the mayor of Louisville. She served in the early years to help get the Muhammad Ali Center to the position it is now. Ladies and gentlemen, it was with great pleasure to be able to present to you and to welcome Dr. Tori McClure to St. Catharine College for our freshman read project. Dr. McClure.
Hello, what a wonderful turnout. I typically start with a video, but this is the wrong foyer for a video. And I'm gonna suspect there might be one or two people in the room that didn't actually read the book. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you the Cliff Notes version, and then I'm gonna open it up for questions. It actually took me several attempts to row across the Atlantic, and took me even more attempts to write a book about rowing a boat across the Atlantic Ocean. My first versions of the book, I did a whole long version of my first attempt to row across the ocean, which ended with a hurricane. I rebuilt the boat in between, and then I did a whole long version of rowing across the ocean successfully. And a woman who was my agent read the manuscript, and she said, "Tori, you had to row across the ocean twice. Your reader does not." And this is great, because my book was too long, and I wanted to make it shorter, because I wanted high school and college-age folks to read the book, and you know, if it's any longer than this book is already, no one's going to read it. So we were able to remove most of the second row and focus on my failed attempt to row across the ocean. And on the first page, I asked my uncle, I'll just read it to you. "In the end, I know I rowed across the Atlantic to find my heart, but in the beginning, I wasn't aware that it was missing. In January of 1998, I asked my uncle, if I read a book about my exploration, should I read it as a comedy, a history, a tragedy, or a romance? With a twinkle in his eye, he said, a romance, it must be a romance. He explained that I was too young to write my life as a history. Who wants to read the history of half a life? Tragedy, he explained, was boring. Anyone over the age of 30 can write his or her life as a tear-soaked muddle. There's no challenge in that land, counsel. Comedies are fine, but the greatest stories in life are about romance. I didn't doubt that my uncle spoke the truth, but there was a problem. I had no experience with romance. None. I was 35. Loser. Tragedy I could write, comedy I could write, even history I could write, but romance was out of my depth. If I had charted a map of my life, I would have placed romance on the far side of an unexplored ocean where ships would drop off the edge of the world and the legend at the edge of the map would read, "Here there be sea monsters." I considered myself a thoroughly modern woman. As a graduate of Smith College, I embraced the notion that our culture had evolved to the point where a woman might openly take on the role of an Odysseus. Like the epic hero in Homer's Odyssey, women could be clever. We could set out on epic quests of our own choosing. Like men, we could be independent and internally motivated. Women could be tested and not found wanting in trials of courage, resourcefulness, endurance, strength, and even solitude. What I did not know was that exploring these vaguely masculine qualities would not be enough for me. I am, after all, a woman. It was not until my boat dropped off the edge of the world into the realm of sea monsters that I began to understand some of what I had been missing. So, because I had no experience with romance at the beginning of the book, the end of the book, I'm married. In the middle, there's a lot of rowing and rowing and rowing, alone in the middle of the ocean. A friend suggested that I was looking for love in all the wrong places. Because I had no experience with romance in the first 3/4 of the book, all the opening chapters are a blend of comedy, history, tragedy. Comedy, history, tragedy. The comedy is easy. My life is hysterically funny. It remains hysterically funny. Being a university president is funny. If you don't laugh, you will do bad things to people. History, I'm a student of history, so it naturally flows into the book. And tragedies, I think my uncle's right. Anyone over the age of 30, and indeed a lot of 13-year-olds, can write their lives as tragedies. There's nothing special about me at all in the tragedies that I faced. And as I was working on this book, I realized that it wasn't about the tragedies. That wasn't the important part. The important part were the people that came into my life and made a difference. So in virtually every chapter, there's a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a friend who comes in and picks me up off the floor or kicks me in the seat of the pants, or is there to help me through some challenge. And the tragedies that we face are not what's important. It's what we do with those tragedies that are important, and what we learn from those tragedies, and what we learn from the people around us. And if we really look around, we are surrounded by magical people who will make a difference in our lives. So I'm going to read a section I think of as comedy. Oh, no, let me skip ahead. So, took 2 tries to row across the ocean, and I rowed 3,000 miles. I lost communications about 8 days from the start of the trip, so I went for 78 days with no contact with anyone on land. And then I was sitting in the middle of the ocean and I'm thinking, the weather is weird and the ocean is wrong. There was something wrong about the wavelengths and the winds, and what was happening is a hurricane was on the way. And all I knew was something bad's going to happen. So the morning Hurricane Danielle arrived was September the 5th. And the boat capsized 5 or 6 times that morning. Now, you are college-level people or older. You're thinking, she's a university president. Was it 5 or was it 6? Numbers are important. Well, when you're inside this cabin bouncing around like a ping pong ball, you just see the ceiling going by. You don't really get to count how many times it went by. So after the 5th or 6th episode, I thought, I can't take this anymore. I'm going to get out of my watertight cabin, climb out of my hatch, tie into my safety tether, crawl across the deck to get the emergency position indicating radio beacon, better known as EPIRB. You turn it on, it says, help! You don't turn it on, it doesn't say anything. In the time it took me to get out there, waves were washing over the boat. It was doing this really annoying submarine thing. When your ears pop because the boat has gone so far under the surface of the water, it's a bad sign. When the boat surfaced, I realized I could not ask another human being to come out into those storms together. So I tied the distress beacon to my life vest, crawled back across the deck, went back into the cabin, went through 5 or 6 more capsizes that day with a distress beacon tied to my life vest, not setting it off with my other hand. Now 2 of my capsizes were end-over-end pitch poles. Really hurts when the boat flips over that way. One capsize dislocated my shoulder, the next capsize put it back into place. If you combine this with the fact that I skied 750 miles across Antarctica to the geographic South Pole, you will understand that, as president of Spalding, I do not decide whether or not the students get a snow day. I make the provost decide whether the students are going to get a snow day. So the next morning, the sun came out, September the 6th, beautiful sunny day. I spent the day bailing the water out of the boat. That night, another hurricane named Earl passed well north of my position, triggered a number of rogue waves. The boat capsized 4 more times. I looked out and thought, okay, the waves aren't nearly as big, the winds aren't nearly as strong, it's safe enough to ask for help. And it was at that point I triggered my distress beacon. A few hours later, I was picked up by a container ship named the Independent Spirit. You can't make that stuff up. They took me to Philadelphia. I returned to Louisville, Kentucky, the home of all great ocean rowers. No ocean than 1,000 miles. And I took a job working for the boxer, Muhammad Ali. And I had been working for the mayor. He had to leave office because of a term limit. And Muhammad asked if I wanted to come work for him, and I'm not dumb. I said, yes, I would love to. And in the time I worked for Muhammad Ali, I realized you don't get to be the world champion 3 times if you don't lose twice along the way. And in studying the life of Muhammad Ali, I learned how many times he got knocked down, not just in the boxing ring, but in the broader world as well. And he reminded me, a failure is not a person who falls down. A failure is a person who does not get back up again. And so I had to go back. And he said to me one afternoon, he said, Tori, you don't want to go through life as the woman who almost rode across the ocean. So I went back, but the second time I went the easy way. The first time I was rowing from North Carolina bound for France. The second time I left the coast of Africa to go to the Caribbean. Well, the North Atlantic, the winds and currents are often against you. On the mid-Atlantic Ocean, the trade winds blow from east to west. The trade winds have blown from east to west for all of recorded history. The earth spins this way, the wind blows that way. It's just how it goes. You can leave the coast of Africa in a barrel. You will get to the Caribbean. If the barrel has oars, you'll get there ever so much more quickly. And so I left the coast of Africa, headed for the Caribbean. On that journey, there was another woman in another boat. Her name was Diana Hoff. She left from the same harbor at the same time, both wanting to be the first woman to row solo across an ocean. I don't think Diana or I cared very much about that particularly, but we were sponsored by people who did care very much, which of us would be the first. And so I was about 600 miles from the finish on the island of Guadeloupe. It looked like I was going to set a new record for the fastest solo crossing, not the fastest solo crossing for a woman, the fastest solo crossing period. I was going to break the record by more than a week. When I got a telephone call, I had 4 redundant communication systems on the second journey. It was one of the things my friends insisted on. And a woman named Diane Steggy in Louisville, Kentucky said, Tori, there's a hurricane in the Caribbean and it seems to be heading in your direction. I'm like, no. I only have one legitimate virtue. I actually do my homework. Most people don't. If you actually do your homework, you will be ahead of 95% of the population. Most people do not do their homework. I studied hurricanes. No hurricane in recorded history had ever traveled west to east at the latitude of the Caribbean. Why not? Because the trade winds blow from east to west. The storms go east to west. Hurricane Lenny was the first hurricane in recorded history to travel 1,000 miles west to east. It came directly over my boat, Princess Dark Cloud. Do not invite me to speak at commencement. Bad things happen. The storm passed. I was able to weather that storm, and right after the storm passed, I called this guy named Mac McClure on my cell phone, and I said, you know, all this love, pure and chaste from afar, it's for the birds. When I get out of this rowboat, will you marry me? And he said yes. So for the next 7 days, I pretty much rowed around the clock, and I rowed into the island of Guadeloupe, landed on December the 3rd, stepped out of the boat literally into Mac's arms, and it seems like I've been there ever since. So that's the synopsis of the story. Now I'm going to go back and read a section that I think of as comedy, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So it's very early in the first trip. You can see it's early in the book. By late afternoon, I had rowed my hands bloody trying to beat a countercurrent. The Gulf Stream was 46 nautical miles to the east. Each hour I rowed the equivalent of 4.5 nautical miles forward, while the current pushed me 2.25 miles back. It would take 20 hours of non-stop rowing to reach the Gulf Stream. If I stopped rowing, the current would push me in the wrong direction. For the first time in the trip, I wondered, what am I doing here? Any person who leaves the comfort of civilization is destined to ask this question from time to time. Still asking it so early in the trip struck me as a lapse in mental fortitude. Don't let the have-you-ever people win. The have-you-ever people are the muffins of the spectator society. Have you ever been alone on the ocean, they ask? No. Have you ever been alone on the ocean at night? No. Have you ever been alone on the ocean at night in the dark? The penchant for redundancy among the have-you-ever people is enormously irritating. How are we human beings to progress without testing our limits or going beyond what is known? We must prefer risk over stalemate. Why are we supposed to be afraid of the dark? People die from hunger, from cold, from injury and illness. But what peril is there in the sun going down? It is an interior darkness, a darkness of mind that is deadly, not the dark of night. Reporter: so, are you crazy? Tori, probably, aren't we all? Reporter: was there some trauma in your childhood that makes you want to do this? Tori: as a girl, I wasn't allowed to play baseball and I never got over it. Reporter: are you an adrenaline junkie? Tori: you try rowing 12 hours a day, every day for 3 months and see how much adrenaline you get out of it. Reporter: if you aren't going to get any money out of this, are you after fame? Tori: can you name the first woman to climb Mount Everest? Reporter: silence. Tori: her name was Yoko Tabe. Can you name the first woman to ski to the North Pole? Reporter: silence. Her name was Anne Bancroft. Can you name the first woman to ski to the South Pole? Reporter: silence. Tori: a woman named Shirley Metz and I were the first women to ski to the geographical South Pole. We touched the pole at the same time, so we could each claim to have been the first. Have you ever heard of either of us? Reporter: a silent shrug. Tori: men occasionally garner fame out of expeditions, women do not. Men are sometimes rewarded for their rugged individualism, women are not. When a woman is too robust or too independent, she gets asked what her boyfriend thinks about it. No one genuinely cares what her boyfriend thinks, they just want to know whether or not she has a boyfriend. Reporter: well, okay then. Tori: okay then. So with that, I will take your questions, and I promise I won't be that snide. You can either come to the mic or shout it out, and I'll repeat it for the reporters. I'm very patient. I took a rowboat alone across the ocean.
Yes. Is it on?
How's Lamar? I have a brother named Lamar, and he's a big part of the book and a big part of who I am. The best of who I am comes from my brother Lamar, and the worst of who I am comes from my brother Lamar. He's intellectually disabled, and the nemesis in the book, or there has to be a conflict in every book for it to have any sort of sense of movement. And my own conflict in my life is very real and very true, is with my own sense of helplessness. And having grown up with a brother who was intellectually disabled, there were times when I couldn't protect him from bullying, I couldn't protect him from prejudice, I couldn't protect him from bad things happening. And those have a lot to do with the tragedies that I report in the book. But my personal tragedy was that sense of helplessness, that if I could just be bigger and smarter and stronger and faster, I could protect my brother from bad things happening. And after I got older and left my brother and went off to college, I would find other people who needed protection, and then I'd beat myself up for not being able to save them. And then I worked with cancer patients, and well, I couldn't always save cancer patients, and I worked with disturbed teenagers, and I couldn't always save disturbed teenagers, so I'll go climb the mountain, and that'll make me feel like I'm not helpless, and I'll ski across the continent, and that'll make me feel like I'm not helpless, and I'll climb this mountain. And ultimately, I realized I was just being stupid. So in the end, I know I rowed across the ocean because I was stupid. I can row to the moon, I will still just be a human being. And every human being has moments when they're helpless. Moments when the injustice is right in front of you and you can't fix it. Makes me crazy. In the book, I make peace with my helplessness. That lasts about 15 minutes at a time. But my brother Lamar is fine. He lives about 10 minutes away from me. And I take him to the grocery every Sunday, and he tells people how mean I am to him because I won't let him buy Pop-Tarts. He loves Pop-Tarts. I took him to the doctor once, and the doctor said, "Do you have any allergies?" He said, "Yes." The doctor said, "What are you allergic to?" He said, "I'm allergic to cigarette smoke and vegetables." And then the doctor said, "Allergic to vegetables, that's very interesting. What do you eat?" "Pop-Tarts." My brother's pretty heavy and can stand to lose quite a lot of weight, and the doctor said, "Lamar, I think you really need to cut back on Pop-Tarts. There's a lot of fat in Pop-Tarts. So maybe just, have a few fewer Pop-Tarts." So the next week I took him to the grocery. He goes, Tori, it's a miracle! It's a miracle! Low-fat Pop-Tarts!" So my brother's doing fine. Other questions? Yes?
What lessons from all of these athletic experiences that you had brought to the presidency of your current institution that you feel have helped you to be a vice president?
Oh, it's an excellent question. I'll repeat it for those who couldn't hear, or I'll attempt to paraphrase it. The question is, what lessons from my explorations do I bring back to civilization into my current position as the president at Spalding University? And it's a wonderful question. I think one of the most underrated qualities a leader needs to have is a sense of self-awareness. If you don't know who you are and what you stand for, why should anyone else follow you? But it is so underrated today, and we spend so little time really getting to know ourselves and really getting to know what we think of ourselves. And which is what makes college so important. You leave high school, and you go off to college, or university, or you go off to graduate school, and taking the time to really explore options to learn whether you're a math science person or an art and literature person, or maybe you're a blend of the two. I certainly was. What is it that lights you up? What is it that makes you just want to do it all day and every day? And so self-awareness is key. I want to do a riff on stupid, but I don't want to do it right now, so remind me with the word stupid in a moment. So another thing that is underrated in leadership is a comfort with uncertainty and a tolerance for adversity. Certainly, President Houston understands a tolerance for both uncertainty and adversity. We can't know all the answers, and there's so many people who refuse to get up from their desk until they think they have it all mapped out. And then one variable comes in and they get all messed up and they have to go back to their desk again. Well, sometimes you just have to pick up your backpack and go. And so that comfort with uncertainty and the tolerance for adversity, bad things happen to all of us. There is no such thing as a perfect life, but there are perfect moments in every life. And so those are three things that I bring to my job. I also think you can never over-communicate. Certainly I can say too much, but I cannot communicate too much. And I'll leave it at that. But I want to go back to stupid. One of the joys of going to college is that you can study things in books or even find them on the internet. But you don't have to experience stupid for yourself because we wrote our stupid down. You can read our stupid and you can avoid stupid. Now, what is stupid, you say? Stupid often begins with lines like, hey, hold my beer, watch this. I know that doesn't apply to anyone in this room. And there are 3 gradations of stupid. There's stupid level 1. Stupid level 1 gets you hurt. Stupid level 2 gets somebody else hurt. Makes you feel really bad. Stupid level 3 involves police and lawyers and may mean that you will never own your own home. And it's so important to do your homework. How many athletes do we have in this room? Ho, 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 ho. I have some things to say to you. If your coach said, hey, on Tuesday I want you to lift weights, and on Wednesday I want you to run, and on Thursday I want you to lift weights, and then I want you to come run some plays, would you blow it all off and try to do it all on Friday night, right before the game? No. That would be dumb, wouldn't it? That would be stupid. But if your faculty member says, we want you to read on Tuesday, and work some problems on Wednesday, and do some stuff on Thursday, you will wait till Friday before the test and try to do it all at once, won't you? The brain works like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the bigger and stronger it gets. Dumb need not last forever. You can work on your brain and it gets stronger, just like a bicep gets stronger if you work at it. Now, before I left to row across the Atlantic Ocean, I could leg press 640 pounds. That's a lot. The Washington Post did a review of my book. They got it messed up. They said I could bench press 640 pounds. Yeah, that's really a lot. Apparently, there is a woman in the United States who can bench press 640 pounds. I'd really rather not, I don't think I want to meet her. I think she would hurt me. But I went to college with folks who were brilliant, much smarter than I ever was in college. But they stopped using their brains. And they got dumb. And I'm much brighter than they are now because I kept doing my homework. I kept learning new things. And it's super important. So I did my riff on stupid. I answered that question. Next up. Yes?
After you finish running were you ever like, what's next?
Yeah, after I finished rowing across the ocean, were you ever like, what's next? I was never like, what's next? But I come and talk to groups with some regularity, although it's been a while since I've talked about my book. And often somebody will say, what are you going to do next? And even a week after I had finished rowing across the ocean, it was like, what are you going to do next? Actually, I had a very nerdy, N-E-R-E-D, conversation with Al Gore right after I finished rowing across the ocean. He called to congratulate me, and we were talking about the environment and stuff like that. And he said, what are you going to do next? And I'm thinking, I just rowed a boat across the ocean. What do you want from me? Well, ski to the South Pole. What are you going to do next? I don't row. And so I said, I don't know, sir. I skied to the South Pole. I rowed across the ocean. Maybe I think the next thing will be row a boat to the North Pole because, with global warming, it will be possible, probably within my lifetime. And he said, a report just came out that the ice cap's been reduced by 40%. Have you read that report? I'm like, no, sir, but I'll look it up. And I have such a grand adventure going right now as the president of Spalding. It's a school very much like St. Catharine. It's scrappy in a good way. The students who come to St. Catharine and the students who come to Spalding choose to come here because they know that they can learn to make a difference. And in November of 2011, Spalding was declared a compassionate university. And honest to goodness, when I got us into it, it was a marketing ploy. A friend with whom I went to divinity school left divinity school and he went off to be a vice president for Microsoft. And I went off to run a homeless shelter. He's now retired and I am not. He made a lot more money than I did. And he was working on something called the Charter for Compassion, which was drafted by Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and a historian of religion named Karen Armstrong. And the premise is, if you study any of the world's religions, you will find some variation of the Golden Rule. The oldest variation of which we're aware comes from Confucius. And he says, whatever is hateful to you, refuse under any circumstances to do unto another. Rabbi Hillel is asked, I imagine him to be a young teenager, if you can recite the whole of Torah while standing on one leg, I will become a Jew. So Rabbi Hillel stands on one foot and says, do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. That is the whole of Torah, the rest is merely commentary, go and learn it. Christianity turns it to the positive, do unto others as they would have them do unto you. Islam picks up that version, exists in Jainism and Buddhism and every other one of the major religions. And at its core, it's a call to be compassionate to others. In America, we like to talk about liberty and we like to talk about equality. These two things are always at war with one another, right? Nature gives us diversity. Adaptation and mutation makes us different over time. And if I am in competition with you, it doesn't help me to figure out how we're the same. It only helps me to figure out how we're different and for me to exploit those differences to say that I'm better and you're not. If I'm working out of compassion, if I'm working out of equality, I have to figure out how we're the same, how we are similar, and I have to figure out how to support you in that. And so the call to compassion is really big and important. That's not why Spalding became a compassionate university. I heard that Stanford was working on becoming a compassionate university, and Spalding always gets confused in a school in Louisville called Sullivan. Sullivan is a young school, it's a for-profit school, Spalding is a much older school, and I just got tired of getting confused with Sullivan, and I wanted to get confused with Stanford. And so we became the world's first compassionate university, and that world's first thing seemed kind of silly because it just goes back to Confucius, right? 2,500 years ago. And I have been surprised by how much our students have embraced the call for compassion. And I have no doubt that the call for compassion is alive and well at St. Catherine's too. That you came here, I don't think people turn away from people in pain because they lack compassion or lack concern or lack empathy. They turn away from people in pain because they don't know what to do. And coming to schools like St. Catherine is teaching you what to do. How to teach a young person, how to nurse somebody back to health. It's all about learning what to do to be of service. So I like my adventure right now. It's a pretty good job, and I expect I shall be doing it for some time. Yes?
What are your motivation to inspire more men or to inspire them?
The question was part of my motivation to inspire young women to do what they're capable of doing. The truth is, not really. You know, I knew I could do this or that thing. My motivation now, when I go off on mountaineering expeditions or an expedition I did in Alaska 2 summers ago, is to figure out what I can help other people do, and often those are young women. I was giving a talk one night to cancer survivors, and you know, they say never follow children or animals. So they had a 14-year-old do a warm-up speech that was stellar. And I had to follow this young person, and she was 14 years old, had survived cancer twice, and she was talking about her bucket list. And when a 14-year-old has a bucket list, you pay attention. And on her bucket list was wanting to go to Alaska. So I took her to Alaska, and we went ice climbing and sea kayaking, and she rafted the Denali River, and I mean, she did things that most 80-year-olds have not experienced. So that was big fun. I am glad when women take inspiration from my book, but I didn't set out to make it particular. There's certainly a fair amount of what outsiders would refer to as feminism in the book. I'm a victim of my education. Having gone to Smith College, I have a sense that women pretty much can do anything they're willing to do their homework to do. And I do very much have a temperament that says, oh, just get out of the way. Other questions? Yes?
During the 78 days that you was out of vacation, how did you keep your mindset and prepare for,
Yeah, in the 78 days I went without contact, how did I keep my mind occupied? How did I prepare for that? I wasn't prepared for that, but it's no secret. If you can spend 3 months alone in a rowboat, you're an introvert. And so in some ways, being a college president is punishment, because all day, every day, you're with other people, and it's a really difficult job for an introvert to have. So when I launched communications, I was actually pretty happy about it initially. And I shot videos for my sponsor, and there were all these videos of me going, yes, I've lost communications, but it doesn't matter, because now I'm free to wander the halls of my mind, blah, blah, blah. And then there were 3 days I saw passing ships, and I was able to talk to them via 1-watt VHF radio. So in the 78 days, I did have 6 minutes of human contact. And it was, American Pearl, I've lost communications, could you relay a message for me? So on the days that I was able to communicate with somebody, those videos were like, I talked to somebody today, I did. But I have had, any way you slice it, I've had a privileged education, whether it's because of the institutions I've attended or just the extraordinary people I've come to know. And all of you have a chance to come to know extraordinary people, so don't doubt that. But I had conversations with them at 3 o'clock in the morning when the weather was bad. Somebody asked after the film Castaway came out, did you have a volleyball? It's like, no, but I had the portraits of presidents taped across my ceiling. And right above my pillow was a picture of Thomas Jefferson. One night I was crawling into bed, and Thomas Jefferson said, so what did you do today? And in my head I said, I rowed, just like I did yesterday, and the day before, and the day before, and the day before. Only that particular day it had been rough, and water had kept washing into the boat, and splashing me and washing into the boat. Waves kept coming over the side. And I got really angry, so I took my bucket. The plumbing system aboard the American Pearl was bucket and chuck it. So I took my bucket, and I scooped up the water, and I threw it into the ocean. I scooped it, take that! So I'm looking at Jefferson, and I said, yeah, I rowed today, and I threw water at the ocean. And Jefferson responded, my dear, we all throw water at the ocean. Some of us think it's very serious business. But it was an imaginary conversation, I assure you. Mackenzie, you had a question. How did it feel to be the first woman to row across the Atlantic Ocean? It really felt good to step on land. Although there were all these reporters there, and I couldn't get on land because nobody wanted to move out of the way because they all wanted to have the perfect spot to take my picture. And so there was nowhere for me to step. And then when I finally, McClure, to whom I'm now married, he's about 6'4", he does this football move and just clears the space for me. And I stepped out of the boat. But the funny thing was, I hadn't been on land in almost 3 months, and it was like the land was moving. So as reporters started to ask questions, I was wobbling around like I'd been drinking things. And so I stepped back into the boat where I felt stable, and I answered questions. And then when I got out of the boat, it felt really good to be with friends. And I had always been so happy by myself that I really didn't appreciate other people. I didn't even really like other people. And rowing across the ocean taught me how valuable other people are. And indeed, at the end, back to that part of feeling stupid and feeling helpless, the only thing that makes our humanity in those moments of helplessness bearable are friendship and love. And those were two things I had been keeping out of my life for really intellectual reasons. But love and friendship make the hard parts bearable. So it's a great question. I think I'm getting the signal that we need to wrap it up with the last question. The question is, there are lots of folks I talk about in the book, like Kim Fitzgerald, who was homeless. Have I stayed in contact with any of those people? Very few. There are a handful of folks with whom I'm still in touch. But it's a terrific question. So To the high school students who are studying to have a college degree, and to the folks who are just starting at St. Catherine's, I wish you well. I hope that when you graduate, you will go out, you will teach, heal, feed, and build. You will inform, advocate, comfort, guide, you will criticize, you will organize, and you will contribute. And in 1,000 other ways, you will make St. Catherine's proud. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you so much, and to bring this down, Tori. Thank you so much, President McClure. President McClure has agreed to hand out the certificates for our essay contest. As always, it was a wonderful contest, over 20 entries, and marvelous, marvelous work. If you entered the contest and you do not win a certificate today, don't let that bother you, because you are all wonderful writers. We were thrilled with the writing we received, and I would just be remiss if I didn't say that. I think actually this is the best year the best year we've had for such high quality across the board, everyone. Thank you so much. So, to announce the winners of our 6th annual Freshman Read Essay Contest. Whoops, what am I hitting here? Whoops, wow.
This is an ice axe. Sometimes I tell more South Pole stories. You never want to try to check this on an airplane.
Oh. So, the winners, we have a tie for 3rd place in the essay contest, and the 3rd place winners receive a certificate and a check for $50 and our thanks. So would Catherine Simpson and Matthew Hutchins please step forward? Thank you. Second place winner receives a certificate and a check for $100. And by the way, these folks were able to have lunch with Tori McClure and get to know her better over lunch. That was part of winning the contest. Would Mariah House, second place winner, please? And to first place winner, who already knows who she is now, she receives a check for $150 and a certificate. Thank you so much, McKenna Rayburn. Dr. McClure has consented to sign books now, and we have some folks who will help you line up to the side. If you want your book signed, please line up in a nice orderly line, and she will sign your book. Now, thank you all for coming. Thank you.